Hey, welcome to another video from the Outdoor Analyst. Today I've got an interesting one for you. This is going to be kind of a review of the TRM Neutron 2, and in a way, maybe even the Atom. Now, as you may have seen, last year the Atom made it onto my top 5 knives of the year, just because it was such a thin and slicey EDC, but you haven't seen it since then. And spoiler alert, the Atom is gone. I ended up selling that just because it didn't really fit, just didn't really fit what I really wanted with it in the long term. And it had nothing to do with the performance of the knife. And that's where this one's actually gonna fall. I wanted the slightly smaller, super thin and slicey Neutron 2. I've seen nothing but positive reviews about every TRM knife pretty much out there. When it comes to the Atom and the Neutron, everybody's a little iffy on the smaller one, but everybody seems to be super positive about the Neutron too. And I thought, great, thin, slicey, everyday carry. It sounds very similar to basically my Benchmade Bug Out, which is probably my favorite super lightweight knife. And that's where these kind of have some competition. They seem sort of like the Bug Out. They're just liner lock, American made, but they have better steel, 20 CV. They're incredibly thin, incredibly slicey. This one I changed over. It's a fat carbon. It was originally a G10, and I thought about getting this in titanium. And this is a 3-inch blade. We'll do some comparisons just so you know, hey, what the size of this is. It's slightly smaller than the Benchmade Bug Out. 3-inch blade, basically 3-inch. I think the Bug Out has a slightly longer blade just by a hair there. Handle scales almost exactly the same as the Bug Out for usefulness and thinness. Very, 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 very similar. We'll kind of put those profiles next to each other. Yeah, almost identical. The Neutron 2 is a hair thicker, not even noticeable. The Benchmade, although, is noticeably lighter. I think this is like 1.8 ounces, something like this. This is 2.5. It is just, I mean, it's not super noticeable, but you can tell it's heavier than the Bug Out, and it has a little more feel to it in a positive way with that weight. Let's do just a few more comparisons. Mini Adamas, actually kind of similar in size as far as, blade. You're getting just a, slightly shorter blade than the Adamas, Mini Adamas. I know it looks a little bigger on camera. Handle is fairly similar in length. Obviously, the width is where this knife really is your major differences there. I guess technically your handle, but you have so much of a choke up there, your handle is bigger because of that awesome choil that TRM kind of provides. But yeah, super thin in comparison. We'll do one more. We'll throw it up against a real high-end EDC, Herman Sting. It's going to be a little bit smaller than the Sting, shorter blade by almost ½ an inch. Handle, actually, the handle, just a hair bit longer on the Sting. So, but usefulness of the handle is where this knife really shines, is that because of that choil, you get to move up quite a bit. And I will say, this is a very ergonomic and very comfy knife. I'm not going to have many negatives to say about this knife in any way, except for the fact that I don't like TRM anymore, and it has nothing to do with their quality. Their quality is pretty good, although this one is not perfectly centered. And how you recenter it is you literally, they say to take off the scales and you bend it, and it does go back. Same thing with the Atom. It's kind of ridiculous. It's very, very thin and lightweight. The liners on these things are what you actually bend. That kind of turns me off a little bit, but it is what it is. So not perfect centering, and I've seen that on quite a few of these Neutrons too, and that's because I think they are so bendy that they can just bend out, and you're literally bending the frame, which is kind of crazy. I actually like the clip on this one. This one's a little tighter than I feel like the Atom was for me. It sits well, it sits fairly darn deep. The one negative, and I will say this about the Atom too, and I think this is really kind of the second part of why I'm not going to be keeping these, is they're kind of pocket peckers. These scales, for some reason, they kind of get you in the pocket. Same thing with the Atom. Super thin, but for some reason, it's not the most comfortable when you're putting your hand back in your pocket. I've had this, in my shorts all summer here. Kind of shocked, to be honest with you, about why that is. It's just, there's something about this knife that is excellent. It is one of the thinnest. It is one of the sliciest. And it is very ergonomic EDCers. But it just kind of feels cheap. And I think that's because of how thin and light it is. And because the liner lock is just not, I don't know, it doesn't have that liner lock. Like, you know, you pull out your Herman Sting. Obviously, we're in a different class here. This is like perfection. It's smooth. This feels just like pure class on a liner lock. This feels kind of like a cheap liner lock. And every now and then you get a little bit of that grind when it comes off the blade there. And it's just, you know, even Holt Haptics, throwing it out here. The most ridiculous. This has a detent nub, so obviously it's like the smoothest thing in the world. But when you compare these two in any way, shape, or form, and I know it's an unfair comparison because this is way less expensive, it just feels cheap. And that's the original thought process of why I got rid of the Atom. And it's still the same process of why I'm getting rid of this. It's an excellent knife. The TRM Atom is an excellent knife, but it's a little pocket pecky, and I know that's a weird feeling just because, and I know these aren't the original scales, it's the same thing. I just don't know why it feels cheap in the hand. It just does. And it's excellent though. It's super thin, it's super light, and it just doesn't feel good to disengage. I don't know why. It just feels kind of like a cheap liner lock. And that is a completely subjective just preference. It really is. I think there's a lot of people that would say this is probably one of the best one and done knives out there. And in some ways, I can understand that. But if you've ever had a nicer liner lock, this just kind of feels, I don't know, kind of cheap, and I don't like it. I like this better. I feel like this feels more comfortable, and it doesn't feel as cheap. We're talking about a Benchmade bug out with FRN. This is as cheap as you get when it comes to flexing stuff. But at least for some reason, it's not gonna flex when the handle flexes. It's not gonna throw my blade out of alignment. And I get more joy out of the bug out. And that's kind of shocking. This feels great in the hand. It is so ergonomic. The clip's actually very ergonomic, and it's an incredible slicer. But the truth is I'm just not gonna keep this around. I'm not. It just doesn't. It's a better knife, I'd say. 20CV crushes S30V, and I feel like they're actually just about the same chippiness in all reality. And TRM does an amazing job. This blade is a fan-freaking-tastic. It is so thin and slicey. So this is a weird review. I have nothing but, goodness to say about how good this knife is. It's just not for me, and I think that's okay. For me, it feels cheap in the hand. It's not for me. For, I think, almost everybody else, if this is right for you, man, it's ergonomically great. It really is. I think it's until I get this liner lock, and it was the same with the Atom. Until that happened, I loved the knife. But for some reason, I just don't feel like it doesn't feel strong enough. It doesn't feel like it's actually going to take care of me. And that is a 100% subjective thought process to this. So if you're interested in this knife, it has my full approval. This knife rocks. So does the Atom. The Atom rocks. It is a longer version of this, and for me, it was so thin and slicey. I wanted something that felt a little better, and in the end, actually, the Herman Slim definitely takes over my Atom. It takes over the job of the Atom by far. It has super thin, slicey, but it's much stronger feeling, much smoother, much more fun too. So there it is. Weird review. It is a weird review. I love and kind of hate TRM. They are a great manufacturer, except for the, obviously, the fact that this is not centered. But they just feel cheap to me. Both of them have, and I can't really say I'm ever going to try another one. I'm kind of over it. That's two knives that feel exactly the same, and that's a positive. If you like that style and that feel, and you like their liner lock, TRM is the money. And this, I know I'm like icy hot on this company, but for me, they just don't work very well. So great knife. It's an incredible knife. I have a few kind of nitpicks. I just don't like how it carries in the pocket. I don't like the feel of the liner locks. It's just not the one for me. And sometimes it's absolutely perfect. It's super smooth. But there's just something about the knife that's not going to do it for me. And that's okay. It's okay to actually respect a company and respect what they do and not like it. That's the beauty of what is out there and how much awesomeness is out there. I think this is an incredible EDC. It's not the EDC for me. If you're interested in one, I think you should pick it up. I really do. I think everyone should try one. I still like the Bug Out a little better, even though I'll admit in some ways it's inferior. Not a better slicer, not a better steel. I like the ergonomics of the Bug Out, but to be honest, I'd probably say the TRM has got it beat, especially if you have larger hands. I have large XL hands, and this knife is tiny. Look how much space you get with a 3-inch blade on there. They have engineered this incredibly well. It's just not going to be the one that sticks around in my collection. So awesome knife. This has been fun. I hope you learned something on the size wise of this thing, got an idea of, I think, an actual critique. It just feels cheap in my hands for the price that I'm paying. It's not a diss on American manufacturing. It's done very, very well. Just for me, nah. It's a hard pass. It's a hard pass for me, but it's still an awesome knife. So anyone that I ever see that says, hey, I've got a Neutron too, all I can say is you have one of the best thin EDC knives out there. What more can I say? I don't like it, but that doesn't mean anything. It's an awesome knife. And so is the Atom. This is kind of going to be my Atom as well. It's just a bigger version of this in my mind. The feel of it is almost identical. It's just longer, and you get a longer, thin, slicey blade. So if you like one, I think you'll love the other. I got this one because I respected the Atom so much. I just, for some reason, thought, it's a little cheap feeling, and it's the same exact feeling with this knife, and it's the same feel in the pocket, too, just a little bit smaller. So there it is. That's my overview. Not for me, but it is a great knife. And hey, if you like this content, kind of like just kind of how I feel about them, that's what most people are here for. Just, hey, here's one person's subjective feeling. If they kind of feel the same way as I do on a lot of knives, great. Then you know how stuff works for me and how it might work for you. But there we go. Like, subscribe, and hey, I will catch you on the next one.